The man who doubted her the most would trust her with his life before sunset. Senior Chief Ryan Walker did not know that yet. Standing on the hot tarmac outside a naval airfield on the California coast, he watched a transport vehicle roll to a stop beside the SEAL team staging area. The morning fog was beginning to lift from the Pacific, revealing rows of equipment cases, helicopters, and operators preparing for an upcoming mission. Ryan folded his arms as a woman stepped out carrying a medical pack over one shoulder. She was not what most people expected when they imagined someone assigned to support an elite SEAL team. Chief Petty Officer Sarah Mitchell was 37 years old, quiet, composed, and dressed in standard operational gear with a medic identifier on her vest. She did not arrive with a speech. She did not introduce herself with stories about her experience. She simply picked up her equipment and walked toward the team. A few operators exchanged glances. One of them smirked. Another looked away. Ryan studied her for a moment before turning back to the mission board. "That is our new medic?" one operator asked. Ryan nodded. "That is what headquarters sent." The response earned a few doubtful expressions. Nobody said anything openly disrespectful, but the message was obvious. The team had spent years working together. Trust was everything. Outsiders were rarely welcomed immediately. Sarah appeared to notice the reaction, yet she showed no sign of concern. She moved calmly through the staging area, checking inventory lists and reviewing emergency equipment. While others talked, she worked. While others speculated, she prepared. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in courage and respect, hit like and subscribe. These stories inspire change. And we are glad you are here. Now, back to Sarah Mitchell. By late morning, the team gathered for a briefing. A large digital map displayed the route for a training operation scheduled to begin later that day. Ryan stood at the front of the room explaining objectives while operators listened closely. Sarah sat near the back taking notes. At one point, she raised her hand. The room grew unexpectedly quiet. Ryan looked toward her. "Yes, Chief?" Sarah pointed to a section of the route. "Weather reports show temperatures rising nearly 15 degrees by afternoon. We may want additional hydration stations along this section." A few operators exchanged amused looks. One whispered something that caused another to grin. Ryan acknowledged the suggestion politely and continued. The meeting moved on, but Sarah noticed the reaction. She simply returned to her notes. Later, while equipment was being loaded, two operators walked past her. One lowered his voice. "She is probably here to hand out bandages." The other laughed softly. Neither realized Sarah could hear them. She continued organizing medical supplies without looking up. Ryan caught part of the exchange, but said nothing. In his mind, the mission mattered more than hurt feelings. Yet as he watched Sarah work alone among stacks of gear, something felt different. She moved with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before. Not the confidence of a newcomer trying to impress people. The confidence of a professional who no longer felt the need to prove anything. Nobody else seemed to notice. Not yet. The afternoon moved quickly as final preparations continued across the staging area. Trucks were loaded, equipment was checked, and mission planners reviewed details one last time. Sarah Mitchell worked quietly among the activity, inspecting medical kits and updating supply inventories. Nobody asked for her opinion. Nobody invited her into the conversations happening between the operators. Most of the team still saw her as a support specialist rather than a true member of the unit. Sarah appeared completely unaffected by it. She focused on her responsibilities with the same calm concentration she had shown since arriving that morning. Nearby, Senior Chief Ryan Walker watched the team preparing for departure. He noticed small things others overlooked. Sarah never wasted movement. She never seemed rushed. Every piece of equipment was placed exactly where it needed to be. Every checklist was completed without reminders. Years of leadership had taught Ryan that competence often revealed itself through details. Still, he found himself sharing some of the same assumptions as the rest of the team. During a short break, several operators gathered near a row of equipment cases. One of them glanced toward Sarah. "I still do not understand why headquarters attached a medic with that kind of profile to this team." Another shrugged. Maybe they just needed someone available. A few quiet laughs followed. Ryan did not join in, but he did not stop the conversation either. Sarah passed nearby carrying a medical bag. If she heard the comments, she gave no indication. She simply continued walking. Later that afternoon, The team conducted a field rehearsal on a rugged training course overlooking the coastline. Strong winds swept across the terrain as operators moved between checkpoints. The exercise was designed to test endurance, coordination, and communication under pressure. Sarah completed every station without complaint. While some participants slowed during steep sections of the route, she maintained a steady pace. More than once she arrived at checkpoints before people expected her to. One operator frowned as he watched her finish a climb, carrying additional gear. "She moves better than I thought." Another answered quickly, "It is only training." The explanation seemed to satisfy him. Ryan observed the exchange without saying anything. As the afternoon continued, Sarah remained an outsider in the eyes of most of the team. Yet small cracks were beginning to appear in their assumptions. She never asked for recognition. She never tried to impress anyone. She simply kept performing at a level that became harder and harder to ignore. As sunset approached, the operators gathered near the transport vehicles for a final briefing before the next day's mission. The ocean reflected shades of orange and gold across the horizon. Ryan reviewed assignments while everyone listened. Sarah stood near the edge of the group, holding a notebook and reviewing emergency procedures. Once again, she looked less concerned about being accepted than about being prepared. When the briefing ended, most of the team headed toward temporary housing. Sarah remained behind for another 20 minutes, checking supplies one final time. Ryan noticed her working alone beneath the fading evening light. For reasons he could not fully explain, he found himself wondering what experience had shaped someone into a person who seemed so comfortable carrying responsibility without seeking attention. The answer was buried somewhere in Sarah's past. Before long, the entire team would discover it for themselves. The following morning arrived cool and gray as low clouds drifted over the coastline. Long before sunrise, activity had already begun around the temporary operations center. Vehicles moved quietly through designated routes while personnel completed final checks before deployment. Sarah Mitchell arrived earlier than almost everyone else. By the time the first operators entered the staging area, she had already inspected emergency supplies, reviewed evacuation procedures, and updated contingency plans. Nobody asked her to do it. She simply believed preparation mattered. Senior Chief Ryan Walker noticed her standing alone beside a table covered with maps and medical equipment. For a moment, he considered walking over to introduce her more formally to the team. Then another task demanded his attention. The opportunity passed. As the morning progressed, the distance between Sarah and the rest of the operators remained noticeable. Nobody openly excluded her, yet nobody truly included her either. During breakfast, most of the team gathered around a large table discussing previous assignments and shared experiences. Sarah sat several feet away reviewing notes while drinking coffee. One operator glanced toward her. "Has anyone actually worked with her before?" Another shook his head. "Not me." A third shrugged. "She is a medic. As long as she knows her job, we will be fine." The conversation moved on, but the assumption remained. To them, Sarah occupied a supporting role. Important, perhaps. Necessary, certainly, but not someone they imagined carrying the same burdens they carried. Later that morning, the team participated in a final readiness evaluation. Various scenarios were presented, requiring quick decisions and coordinated responses. Ryan observed carefully as operators worked through each challenge. Once again, Sarah surprised him. She identified potential complications before others noticed them. She anticipated needs several steps ahead. During one exercise, she quietly suggested an adjustment that improved the entire plan. The recommendation was adopted without discussion. 10 minutes later, the team leader responsible for that section received compliments for the solution. Sarah never mentioned that the idea had been hers. Ryan noticed. More importantly, he noticed that she seemed completely unconcerned about receiving credit. After the evaluation ended, Ryan reviewed personnel records in preparation for the mission. Most files contained familiar information. Training history, qualifications, assignments. Nothing unusual. Then he opened Sarah's file. His eyes narrowed slightly. Several sections contained references to specialized training programs. Others listed assignments with limited details. Entire portions appeared abbreviated or restricted. Before he could examine them further, another officer entered the room requesting immediate assistance with mission planning. Ryan closed the file and stood up. The questions remained unanswered. Outside, Sarah continued preparing equipment near a transport vehicle. One of the operators approached carrying additional supplies. "Need help?" he asked casually. Sarah looked up, slightly surprised. "Sure." Together, they organized the remaining gear. It was a small interaction, almost insignificant. Yet it marked the first time someone from the team had offered assistance rather than judgment. Sarah thanked him and returned to work. As the morning moved toward departure time, the atmosphere gradually changed. The operators still viewed her as a medic. They still underestimated what she might be capable of. But certainty was beginning to disappear. Small observations had started replacing assumptions. Nobody knew it yet, but before the day was over, every remaining doubt about Sarah Mitchell would be challenged in a way none of them expected. Shortly after noon, the team departed for the exercise area. The operation was designed as an advanced field assessment that would combine navigation, endurance, communication, and emergency response under realistic conditions. Although everyone understood it was a training environment, the standards were high and expectations were even higher. As transport vehicles moved along a rugged coastal route, most of the operators discussed assignments and contingency plans. Sarah Mitchell sat quietly near the rear, reviewing medical procedures one final time. Nobody included her in the tactical conversations. By now she seemed accustomed to it. When the convoy reached the training zone, the team immediately began moving between designated checkpoints spread across several miles of uneven terrain. Ryan Walker led from the front, monitoring progress and adjusting assignments as conditions changed. At first, everything unfolded smoothly. Operators reached their objectives on schedule. Communications remained clear. Morale stayed high. Yet beneath the surface, fatigue slowly began accumulating. Temperatures rose throughout the afternoon, just as Sarah had predicted during the briefing. Several team members consumed more water than expected. Others began showing signs of exhaustion from carrying heavy equipment over long distances. Sarah noticed every detail. She quietly adjusted supply distribution and encouraged hydration without drawing attention to herself. More than once, her decisions prevented small problems from becoming larger ones. Most people never realized it. During one checkpoint evaluation, an instructor introduced an unexpected scenario requiring immediate medical planning. Before anyone else responded, Sarah assessed the situation and calmly outlined a complete evacuation sequence. The instructors exchanged brief looks of approval. Several operators appeared surprised. One of them glanced toward Ryan. "She has done this before." Ryan did not answer. He was beginning to suspect the same thing. Later, as the team continued deeper into the training area, weather conditions shifted unexpectedly. Strong winds rolled in from the ocean, reducing visibility across portions of the route. Communications became more difficult. Movement slowed. The exercise remained under control, but the margin for error narrowed considerably. Ryan gathered the team to discuss adjustments. While operators debated options, Sarah studied the map in silence. Finally, she pointed toward an alternate route. "This path gives us better access if we need medical extraction support." The group fell quiet. Ryan examined the route and realized she was correct. It offered several advantages nobody else had noticed. He nodded. "We will use it." For the first time, nobody questioned her input. The change was subtle, but it mattered. As the afternoon continued, the team pressed forward through increasingly demanding conditions. Confidence remained high, yet uncertainty had begun creeping into the operation. Something felt different. The exercise was no longer simply testing physical endurance. It was testing judgment, preparation, leadership, and although nobody recognized it yet, the moment that would change everything was drawing closer. Sarah continued moving alongside the team with the same calm focus she had displayed since the beginning. She did not know that before the day was over, every assumption surrounding her role would disappear. And when that moment arrived, it would not be her words that changed minds. It would be her actions. By mid-afternoon, the exercise entered its most demanding phase. The team moved through a remote section of the training area where steep ridges overlooked miles of rugged coastline. Winds continued increasing, forcing everyone to work harder just to maintain pace. Ryan Walker checked progress reports while operators advanced between designated objectives. The instructors observing the exercise had intentionally increased complexity, introducing unexpected challenges designed to test decision-making under pressure. What began as a routine evaluation was becoming something far more difficult. Sarah Mitchell remained near the center of the formation, monitoring everyone around her. While others focused on navigation and communication, she paid attention to people. She noticed who was tiring faster than expected. She noticed who was carrying extra weight. She noticed who had stopped drinking enough water. More importantly, she quietly addressed problems before they became serious. At one checkpoint, an operator appeared unsteady after a long climb. Before anyone else reacted, Sarah handed him water, checked his condition, and adjusted his load distribution. The entire interaction lasted less than a minute. The operator thanked her and continued moving. Several teammates watched the exchange. For perhaps the first time, they were beginning to understand that Sarah saw details they missed. As the afternoon continued, clouds darkened overhead. Visibility decreased across portions of the route. Communications became inconsistent. Ryan gathered the team for a quick update near a rocky overlook. Everyone studied the map while wind pushed against their uniforms. An instructor announced a new scenario. 2 simulated casualties would be introduced during the next phase, requiring rapid assessment and coordinated movement. The team acknowledged the instructions and prepared to continue. Several operators exchanged confident smiles. Training scenarios were familiar territory, yet something about the conditions made this one feel different. The terrain was more difficult. Fatigue was accumulating. Small mistakes were becoming more costly. Sarah reviewed her medical equipment one final time and secured every strap on her pack. Ryan noticed her attention to detail. "You expecting a difficult afternoon?" he asked. Sarah looked toward the distant ridgeline. "I expect people to underestimate how tired they are." Ryan gave a small nod. The answer stayed with him longer than he expected. An hour later, the scenario began. The team received notification that 2 members were considered unable to continue without assistance. The exercise immediately shifted. Operators who had been moving quickly now faced a different challenge. Transporting 2 exhausted teammates across difficult terrain while maintaining coordination required strength, planning, and discipline. Several possible solutions were discussed. None looked easy. Ryan examined the route ahead and felt concern growing. The remaining distance was longer than anticipated, and daylight was slowly disappearing. Around him, the team worked through options. Sarah remained silent. She listened carefully, studying the terrain and the people rather than the map. The instructors watched from a distance, taking notes. Nobody realized that this simulated emergency was about to reveal far more than endurance or tactical planning. It was about to expose the difference between assumptions and reality. And as the team prepared to face its most challenging test of the day, the person they had spent hours viewing as simply a medic was quietly preparing to do something none of them expected. The instructors activated the scenario just after 4 o'clock. 2 operators were designated as simulated casualties and immediately removed from normal movement. The announcement changed the atmosphere at once. What had been a demanding exercise suddenly became a test of leadership, endurance, and teamwork. Ryan Walker gathered the team around a map spread across a weathered equipment case. Strong winds continued pushing across the ridgeline, while daylight slowly faded behind thick clouds. The route back to the extraction point stretched across difficult terrain. Under normal circumstances, moving 2 exhausted teammates that distance would require careful coordination. Under current conditions, it looked even more challenging. Several operators began discussing options. One suggested rotating carrying assignments every few hundred yards. Another proposed splitting the team into separate groups. None of the plans seemed ideal. Every solution carried risks. Every minute spent debating increased pressure. Sarah Mitchell listened quietly while studying both the terrain and the people standing around her. She noticed something important. The discussion focused almost entirely on the route. Nobody was paying attention to the physical condition of the team itself. Hours of movement had already drained energy from nearly everyone present. Finally, Sarah stepped forward. "Before we decide how to move them, we need to decide who is actually capable of carrying them." The group fell silent. Ryan looked at her and nodded. "Go ahead." Sarah quickly evaluated each operator. She asked simple questions, checked hydration levels, and observed body language. Within minutes, she identified several people who were far more fatigued than they appeared. The assessment surprised everyone. 2 operators who had volunteered immediately admitted they were struggling more than expected. Sarah adjusted the plan. Instead of exhausting the entire team, She organized assignments based on actual condition rather than confidence. The difference was immediate. The movement began smoothly. For the first mile, the system worked exactly as intended. Then the terrain became steeper. Progress slowed. Wind intensified. Several operators began losing pace. One of the simulated casualties was significantly larger than the others, making transport even more difficult. Ryan could see frustration building. Every few minutes another adjustment became necessary. Yet Sarah remained calm. She moved continuously between team members, encouraging them, redistributing equipment, and finding ways to conserve energy. What stood out was her own endurance. While others showed increasing fatigue, she seemed unaffected. She carried medical gear, assisted with equipment, and still maintained a steady pace. More than once she volunteered to take additional weight from teammates without making a point of it. Ryan watched carefully. The woman many had dismissed as simply a medic was now becoming the most reliable person in the group. As daylight continued fading, the situation reached a turning point. A difficult section of rocky ground forced the team to stop and reassess. Progress had nearly stalled. Several operators exchanged worried looks. The extraction point still felt far away. Sarah studied the route ahead for only a few seconds before making a decision. "We are losing time because we are treating this as 6 separate problems," she said calmly. "It is one problem. We solve it together." Then she stepped forward and took on one of the most demanding positions in the formation. Nobody argued. Nobody questioned her. For the first time since she joined the team, every operator listened. And as the group resumed movement across the rugged coastline, Ryan realized something remarkable was happening. Sarah Mitchell was no longer being viewed as the team's medic. She was becoming the person holding the entire team together. The final miles felt longer than the entire exercise that had come before them. Wind swept across the coastal ridges as daylight faded into a cold gray evening. Every member of the team was tired. Muscles ached. Boots felt heavier with each step. Yet the group continued moving because stopping was not an option. Ryan Walker remained near the front, monitoring progress and checking on the operators carrying the simulated casualties. What caught his attention again and again was Sarah Mitchell. Hours earlier, most of the team had viewed her as support personnel. Now she was setting the pace. Whenever someone struggled, she appeared beside them. Whenever confusion emerged, she offered a solution. Whenever morale dipped, she quietly found a way to keep people moving forward. At one steep section of the route, the team encountered its most difficult obstacle yet. Loose ground and strong winds made movement slow and exhausting. The operators transporting the larger casualty were clearly reaching their limit. One finally stopped and lowered his shoulders. "I need a minute." Nobody criticized him. Everyone understood. They were all approaching their limits. Sarah immediately assessed the situation. She looked at the remaining distance, studied the terrain ahead, and made a decision. Without hesitation, she redistributed equipment among the team and personally took on additional weight herself. Several operators exchanged surprised looks. The load she accepted would have challenged many of them even under normal conditions. Yet Sarah never complained. She simply adjusted her gear and continued moving. Ryan watched carefully. What impressed him was not her strength. It was her consistency. She had been performing at the same level since sunrise. While others fluctuated between confidence and fatigue, Sarah remained steady. The realization forced him to reconsider everything he thought he knew about her. As the team pushed onward, conversations gradually changed. The jokes disappeared. The assumptions vanished. Operators who had barely spoken to Sarah that morning were now asking for her input before making decisions. More importantly, they listened to her answers. Respect was emerging naturally, not because anyone ordered it, but because Sarah had earned it through action after action. Then came the moment nobody forgot. Near the final stretch of the route, another carrier reached complete exhaustion and could no longer maintain pace. The formation slowed. Progress nearly stopped. Before anyone could suggest a solution, Sarah stepped forward again. She calmly reorganized the team and personally assumed responsibility for helping move both simulated casualties through the remaining distance. The instructors observing from afar immediately took notice. Even they seemed surprised by the determination unfolding in front of them. Ryan moved beside her. "You do not have to do all of this yourself." Sarah looked ahead toward the distant extraction point. "I know. Then why are you doing it?" Ryan asked. Sarah offered a small smile. "Because the team needs to get there." The answer was simple. No speech. No dramatic declaration. Just responsibility. Ryan felt something shift inside him. For the first time since meeting her, he stopped thinking of Sarah as the team's medic. He started thinking of her as one of the strongest people he had ever served beside. Ahead, lights from the extraction area finally became visible through the fading evening. The objective was close. The exercise was nearly over. Yet everyone understood that something far more important had happened. Long before reaching the finish line, Sarah Mitchell had already changed the way the entire team saw her. The extraction point came into view just before sunset. Portable lights illuminated a section of open ground near the coastline where instructors and support personnel waited to receive the team. From a distance, the objective looked close. In reality, the final stretch remained difficult. Every operator was exhausted. The wind had not weakened. The terrain still demanded concentration. Yet something had changed within the group. Earlier in the day, they had moved as individuals completing assigned tasks. Now they moved as a team united by a common goal. At the center of that transformation stood Sarah Mitchell. As the formation approached the extraction zone, instructors stepped forward to observe the final phase of the exercise. They watched operators coordinate movement, manage resources, and support one another through the last portion of the route. More than once their attention returned to Sarah. They had been monitoring her performance throughout the day. What they saw now only reinforced their earlier observations. She remained focused on others rather than herself. Even after hours of continuous effort, she continued checking on teammates and offering assistance wherever it was needed. Ryan Walker noticed the same thing. He had spent years evaluating people under demanding conditions. Talent often appeared quickly. Character took longer to reveal itself. What he had witnessed throughout the day was not simply competence. It was leadership expressed through service. When the team finally crossed into the extraction area, a wave of relief spread through the group. Equipment was set down. Water bottles appeared almost instantly. Several operators dropped into nearby chairs while others stretched tired muscles. The instructors began collecting notes and recording observations. Sarah quietly moved from person to person, checking conditions and ensuring everyone was recovering properly. She seemed far less interested in discussing her own performance than in making sure the team was doing well. One of the operators who had doubted her from the beginning approached while she organized medical supplies. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Sarah." She looked up. "Yes." The operator smiled awkwardly. "I was wrong about you." Sarah appeared genuinely confused. "About what?" He laughed softly. "About a lot of things." For the first time all day, she smiled without immediately returning to work. Nearby, Ryan sat reviewing instructor evaluations that had already started arriving electronically. Most comments focused on teamwork and decision-making. One observation appeared repeatedly throughout multiple reports. Exceptional leadership under pressure. Outstanding situational awareness. Superior endurance and judgment. Ryan already knew who the comments referred to. Then he noticed something else attached to Sarah's record. Curious, he opened a section of her personnel file that he had not finished reviewing earlier. This time he read further. Specialized qualifications filled the screen. Advanced operational training. High-level certifications. Multiple assignments supporting elite units. Years of experience in environments far more demanding than anyone on the team had imagined. Ryan stared at the file for several seconds. The evidence had been there all along. Sarah had never hidden it. She simply never talked about it. Across the extraction area, the team continued gathering around her. Not because of her title. Not because of anything written in a personnel record. They gathered because they had witnessed her character with their own eyes. And as darkness settled over the coastline, Ryan realized the final lesson of the day had not yet been delivered. The team had discovered who Sarah truly was through her actions. Soon they would discover just how extraordinary her history really was. Later that evening, after equipment had been secured and evaluations were nearly complete, the team gathered inside a briefing room overlooking the dark coastline. The atmosphere felt completely different from the morning. Conversations were quieter, more thoughtful. The long day had given everyone time to reflect. Sarah Mitchell sat near the back of the room reviewing medical reports, seemingly unaware that she had become the focus of nearly every discussion. Senior Chief Ryan Walker stepped to the front carrying a tablet containing the final instructor assessments. He thanked the team for their performance and reviewed several lessons learned from the exercise. Then he paused. "There is one more thing," he said. The room became silent. Ryan looked toward Sarah before returning his attention to the group. Most of us spent the last 2 days making assumptions. Several operators shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Nobody needed him to explain further. They knew exactly what he meant. Ryan held up the tablet. "This afternoon I finished reviewing Chief Mitchell's full record." Sarah finally looked up from her paperwork. Her expression suggested she would have preferred the subject remain private. Ryan continued anyway. Before joining this team, she completed assignments supporting multiple elite units. She earned qualifications that very few people ever achieve. She has spent years operating in some of the most demanding environments our military can offer. The room remained completely still. Several operators exchanged surprised glances. Others simply stared at Sarah. Ryan lowered the tablet. "The interesting part is that none of that is why she earned our respect today." He pointed toward the group. "You did not respect her because of a file. You respected her because you watched her carry responsibility when everyone else was tired. You watched her solve problems without asking for recognition. You watched her put the team first every single time." Sarah looked down for a moment, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. One of the operators who had joked about her on the first day slowly stood up. "Chief," he said, "I owe you an apology." Sarah smiled gently. "You do not owe me anything." The operator shook his head. "No, I do." Another stood. Then another. The moment was not dramatic. It was honest. Each of them understood they had judged someone before taking the time to know her. Sarah listened quietly and accepted their words with the same humility she had shown throughout the entire exercise. When the meeting ended, people did not rush toward the exit. Instead, they gathered around her, asking questions and sharing conversations that should have happened from the beginning. Ryan watched from across the room. The transformation was complete. Sarah had arrived as an outsider. She left as a trusted member of the team. As the building gradually emptied, Ryan approached her one final time. "You could have told us who you were," he said. Sarah closed her notebook and smiled. "I did." Ryan looked confused. Sarah glanced toward the door where members of the team were waiting for her. "I showed you." Ryan laughed softly and nodded. Outside, the wind from the Pacific carried the cool air of approaching night across the base. The team walked together toward the parking area, no longer divided by assumptions. In the end, Sarah Mitchell never demanded respect. She never argued for it. She never announced her accomplishments. She earned it the way the strongest leaders always do, through quiet competence, steady character, and actions that spoke louder than any words ever could.